Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another live stream where I am answering your real estate and finance questions. Hope you guys are well. Do me a favor, if you're watching this, tell me if the lighting, the audio is good to go. I'd also love to know where you guys are watching from. Sure, there's a lot of anxious people out there at the moment waiting on election results and what have you. So hopefully this can be a little time away to think about something else, hopefully answer some questions for you, guide you in the right direction if you're thinking about buying or selling, refinancing, whatever really, real estate related. So if you do have questions, I encourage you to put them in the comments. That's how... that's what basically the show's about, is me helping answer those questions. And without those questions, I'm sitting here talking and you guys are staring at my face, and I don't think you want to stare at this mustache. So, I'll start it off. Susanna here has a question that we are going to look at. And she's asking, when you purchase a home that backs to a hill, do you recommend a geological report? Also, does the broker get notification of where the property line is located during escrow? So both good questions, but both could be audio's echoing a little bit. All right, let's see here. We'll change out the audio here in just a second, guys. Let me switch this up. Sorry. Hello. Is that any better on the audio? Abraham? Anyhow, I'll keep talking here, and if it's awful, come back to me and let me know on the audio. How about now? Nope. All right. So to answer the question about backing to a hill, so it really depends on the area. Backing to a hill typically isn't really an issue as much as it is having a house that's built on a hill, on stilts and raised foundation is more of a problem, at least here in Southern California. Now I do know there are some areas in Southern California that are more prone to potential slides and that sort of thing. Areas like Laguna Beach, even down in San Clemente, have some of these. So depending on the area, it might be worth having someone come take a look at it. But usually, I would advise, I would say that you probably don't need to spend the money to do it, because generally the geological reports are somewhere give or take $1,000 on those. So depending on what you want to spend and the comfort level you want to have going in, it might be worth it, but in most cases probably not necessary. So the next question was, does the broker get notification of where the property line is located? No, we don't necessarily get notification of exactly where the property line is located, but what we do see is the prelim that gives you an outline of where the property is located, but it doesn't give you specific property lines. It tells you the dimension of the actual the lot size, but if you want true property lines, you're going to have to get a surveyor out to do that, and in some cases, depending on where you're located, that can also be an expensive task. So most homes here, at least in Southern California, there are fences, there are things built out to certain lot lines. I am from North Carolina, so I understand, where I grew up, there weren't fences, and you just had land that ran into the next person's land and what have you, and there was really no determination on where that property ended. So if you're in one of those areas, it might be a little bit more difficult to determine that, so a surveyor may be necessary. So I am going to check audio here real quick, see what we got. Is that any better on the audio, guys? Help me out. Any better? Let's see. Still getting an echo. Still getting an echo. Still getting an echo. right, echoes aren't good, so let's still get an echo. Still getting an echo. Figure out here on the echo. All right, echoes aren't good, so let's still get an echo. Still getting an echo. Figure out here on the echo. All right, echoes aren't good to go, so let's still get an echo. Still getting an echo. Figure out here on the echo. All right, echoes aren't good. Any difference there on the echo at the moment? Are we still getting it? Figure out here on the echo. All right, echoes aren't good. Any difference there on the echo at the moment? Are we still getting it? Figure out here on the echo. All right, echoes aren't good. Any difference there on the echo at the moment? How about now? Test. How we doing on audio, guys? Help me out. Somebody let me know. But as we await election results, let's talk about something that came through a moment ago from a viewer on FHA asking about applying for an FHA loan. Thanks, John, for letting me know on the audio there, guys. Sorry about that. So applying for FHA, if you're applying for any mortgage, you need to do one of two things. You need to stay offline is my recommendation, but go to either your bank, your credit union, and or call a mortgage broker. A broker is different than the banks and your credit unions, as they have access to multiple lenders, multiple programs. They can compare interest rates with different people, send your loan to whoever is the most competitive for one, but it's also that they can do things that don't necessarily fit inside of a box, and that is one of the big problems with, say, a bank or a credit union, is that they only do their loans. So in some cases, FHA loans, there are DTI restrictions with FHA. Sometimes banks, credit unions might not go up to the higher DTIs because it doesn't fit in their box, whereas a broker has access to multiple lenders that may do that loan, whereas your traditional bank or credit union may not. So I would say talk to a mortgage broker. They usually have access to more programs. They are usually more competitive on their interest rates in most cases. So that would be my recommendation, whether it's FHA, conventional, or what have you. So, make sure you're talking to a mortgage broker. And the reason I say stay offline is a lot of the online lead generation stuff, you're not dealing with a professional. You're just dealing with someone in a call center who probably isn't the one that's going to handle your loan to start, but also usually isn't, a professional. Anybody working in a call center, in my experience, isn't experienced in the business, and probably not the right person to answer your questions and help guide you in the right direction. So, that would be my recommendation on talking to somebody about FHA, conventional, VA, anything really for that matter, is just, make sure, even if you're talking to your credit union, you're also talking to one of those other guys, just to get something to compare it to. So no new questions coming in at the moment, so I'll just keep talking on here, guys. Put something out there if you have it. No. So, again, I'll answer some stuff too that, I just put a video out and actually had somebody call me today about buying in this market. Is it a good idea? And again, we've talked about this many times. He happens to be in my market, and he actually has a realtor that's a friend of his, and so we still had a conversation about just buying in the market and concerns with a potential market crash. What happens at the end of the potential, the forbearance period that ends at the end of December. So right now, if you've been paying attention to any of this, is there's currently a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures that expire at the end of December. Now, there are some states, some cities that are still doing evictions and foreclosures and what have you, but there was a federal ban, if you will, on evictions and foreclosures, and that expires at the end of the year. So the question partly is, what happens when that expires? Do a flood of foreclosures hit the market? Are there a ton of, tenant owned properties or properties owned by landlords that then decide to no longer be landlords and sell their properties, and all of this flood of supply, if you will, comes to the market? if you've watched the last video I did, I addressed this, but one thing I want to talk about is that, you know, I as a real estate broker was fortunate enough during the 2008 debacle when housing really got hit. I had an account at the time with Fannie Mae and in Wells Fargo and Bank of America and got relos. I mean, I'm sorry, got REOs through them at that time. And so I sold a lot of foreclosed properties during that span. And I saw a lot of these foreclosures that people had lived in for a year, 2 years, 3 years in some cases. In NODs, notice of defaults had been filed so long ago, and these people were still fighting it and staying in the property and what have you. And so the reason I bring this up is because even if foreclosures do start to happen, now there's a lot of measures in place to help people, whether or not you believe that or not. There's a lot of measures in place with lenders to work with homeowners that should assist a lot of what could potentially turn into foreclosures. And so with that, I think that's going to mitigate a lot of the those potential foreclosures happening. But the ones that do happen, because there will be people that didn't take advantage of the forbearance. One, because they didn't know about it. Two, they thought they were just included in it, or whatever the reasoning is. So there will be foreclosures as a result of this. And the reason I bring this up is because it's going to take months, years in some cases, to go through that process. So to think that you're going to have all of these foreclosures just hit the market in the first quarter of the year or the first half of the year because there's a moratorium that expires is not going to happen. It's not going to happen, at least here in California, because it has to go through the court. There's a process that goes along with that. This isn't as easy as just a moratorium expiring and people getting evicted from their houses and the houses are for sale. This is a process. And with that, there's probably going to be a lot of legality, involved as well because of the way this was that this took place, and people are going to say that they were, not offered the right options. And so there's going to be a lot that goes into it. And so the foreclosures aren't going to happen overnight. And the same is said for tenants being evicted, right? So, you can't file those evictions until the start of the year. And then I think you have to wait 30 days, is my understanding, after that in order to file the eviction process. But even if it's the beginning of the year, January 1st, that you can start those eviction filings, California is a very tenant-friendly state. They, really try to help tenants out, and tenants are going to fight, and so it's going to take time for those tenants to also be worked through the system. But who's to say that landlord, that owner of the property, isn't just going to go out and get a new tenant? They might be a little bit more careful in deciding who that tenant is, but who's to say that they're just going to just stop being landlords and sell their property? That's what I don't understand, is that everybody thinks that all of these are going to turn into, new listings on the market. And if they do, okay, that just provides us with more inventory, and where we currently sit at the moment, there's a lack of it, right? And so any property coming to the market would actually be welcomed, especially with the buyer demand that's out there. So I'll get off my pedestal at the moment, stop talking about that, and answer some of these questions coming in right now. So Gail asked, is it a seller's market right now? Definitely a seller's market here in Southern California. I'm fortunate enough to network with a lot of top producing real estate agents all over the country. And all of these people that I'm talking to on a regular basis are experiencing markets just like our own here in Southern California, which is low supply, high demand, multiple offers on a lot of properties selling above asking. So yes, it's definitely a seller's market, and in my opinion, probably going to remain one for at least the next 6 to 8 months. I mean, I would think through 2021 is probably a safe bet. But yeah, definitely a seller's market. What's the lowest interest rate I've seen or worked with for FHA 30-year fix, not paying points? Honestly, so I don't usually get involved on the interest rate side of things, Freddie. Because I'm on the real estate side, I don't typically get too detailed in there. I mean, if the client's happy with their rate and so on and so forth, I don't dig in too deep to find out what's going on there, whether they're paid points or not. But I have seen rates in the low 2%, 2 3/8, 2.5. I don't know if I've seen anything as low as 2.25 for a 30-year, but I've been told of people out there getting rates like that. My guess is probably paying some points to do that, but it's hard to say without actually knowing what's going on. All right. John's telling you people to listen to me. Wow. Thanks, John. I wouldn't go that far, but no, I mean, the goal with this channel has always been to provide education, to provide some insight from, not just a talking head, not somebody that's on YouTube or just on Facebook, just, that has an agenda that just tells you, that the market's going to crash or what have you. The goal here has always been to tell you what I'm seeing as an agent and experiencing, as someone that's helping buyers and helping sellers. Right now, it might not provide you all the insight you need, but it's a pretty good idea. I mean, when you have clients that are, every single client is having to put in multiple offers in most cases, a lot of them over asking or at asking, getting outbid because there's 5, 7, 10 offers on a property. That's something to consider. I mean, especially if you're considering buying and or trying to figure out where the market's headed. I mean, because that's a pretty good indicator that it's a strong market. Do I have any tips for people underage who want to get into real estate? There's a lot of schools out there, a lot of real estate schools that do the training. I'm not sure of the age that you're talking here. In California, you got to be 18 to be a real estate agent. And I did 4 years of college. I was actually a computer science major, had no real understanding of real estate coming out of college, and just kind of landed in real estate and mortgage. And really liked it because I'm a numbers guy, being computer science background, and enjoyed that side of it. But there are a lot of schools out there that teach you, the education that you need in order to pass the test. The problem with real estate, at least in the state of California, is that the test you take has nothing to do with actually selling real estate or helping clients and helping buyers. It's really all the legalities of real estate and the things that more often than not you're never going to use. Because it's has to do with almost like being an attorney, a real estate attorney, more so than being an actual real estate agent. But I would tell you, there's a lot of companies out there that offer training depending on where you're located. So, once you're able to get your license, find a company that offers training. There's a lot of them that have really good training for new agents. Working on a team is a good way to understand and get accustomed to the real estate business. So I definitely go that route. If I were new in this business, I would start with the team idea and not try to go out solo, because you can learn a lot as a team, especially on a team that does a lot of business. Get the ins and outs pretty quickly, especially if you're a fast learner, and then at that point decide the next step that you want to take. So Freddie's about to close escrow tomorrow. Congrats, Freddie. FHA loan with your brother, 30-year fixed, and you want to buy a second home with your girlfriend. Any advice? Would I still be able to do FHA, or are you forced to do conventional? So depends. You could do FHA at some point in the future. You couldn't do FHA right now. Two owner-occupied properties back to back like that you're not going to be eligible to do that. So you probably have to go conventional loan if you're doing it that far after. You might even have some issues depending on how quickly after, getting approved with a lender if you did FHA on the first one and trying to do conventional, because they might be wondering why you're buying two primaries or what have you. So if you were just going on as a non-occupying co-borrower, then it might be an option. But if you're actually going on it as a borrower, then you might have some problems there. Let's see here. So I'm not sure what you're saying there, John. Let me know. So you understand the market. Oh, got it. Thank you. I appreciate it. So DM Tom is saying he's thinking about an FHA loan and has a 10% down payment. Will my PMI fall off after 10 years? So With FHA and 10% down, that's a good question. I'm drawing a blank right now on that. It is, I think it requires 10% down and it will fall off after 10 years. I believe you're accurate on that. I'm not 100% certain. That's one of those things that has changed over time, and I don't remember the answer to it, but I think that is accurate. So I need I need to check my facts here, which I'll do in just a minute. So, but I believe you're accurate there. But more, I mean, what I would tell you to do, just like anything else, is ask your mortgage professional that exact question. Right? Is getting an FHA loan, if you're putting 10% down, does it fall off after 10? The thing that I would tell you is that I tell everyone is most people don't have a loan for 10 years. I mean, at some point you get an FHA loan, you put 10% down. If you have, another 10% equity in the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, chances are you're going to refinance into a conventional loan and get rid of the PMI anyway. So it's probably less of a concern when it falls off. Unless the market were to change significantly in that time period and you weren't able to get that additional 10% equity. So, I mean, the latest stats just came out, and I think property in California is up nearly 15% from this time last year. So if you would have done that loan a year ago, chances are you would have had the equity now to refinance into a conventional loan. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about getting FHA. A lot of people are turned off by FHA now because, or at least when they hear about it, because they hear about the PMI being on the loan for the life of the loan when you do the 3.5% down, or let's say less than 10%. But they don't think that, once they get that equity in the property, that they're going to refinance and get out of that loan anyway. And so in a lot of cases, FHA ends up being better financially monthly, even with the PMI, than say a conventional loan. But people think, that conventional is better in some cases because it's conventional versus FHA. People have negative connotations when it comes to FHA for whatever reason. So, just remember, at some point you're probably going to refinance out of that loan or sell the property. So it's probably less of a concern. All right. What other questions do we have here, guys? Let's talk. You can either do that or you can watch the election. So it's up to you. I know I'd just rather talk to the camera than watch the election, to be completely honest. So I'll just sit here and talk to the camera. Interest rates. What are interest rates doing? Last I heard, actually spoke to my mortgage guy, a couple days ago, we were talking about FHA. I think I did a video where the buyer at the time got a 3% interest rate on a 30-year fixed. He told me that rates have gone down since then. So rates on FHA are lower than that. I don't know what they are. And quite frankly, I can't quote them anyway because I don't have an MLS ID. Well, I have a number, I just don't have the education, so I'm not technically licensed. So, but rates are strong and likely will stay there. There's, depending on what happens in the election over the next couple of days, what we saw last night was kind of interesting. I think it was to be expected in some regard, but what we saw was, once they said that there was a chance that Biden was going to win, the Dow futures dropped. The market was getting hammered overnight, which means that people are the market was going to open down. People would sell stocks. Typically, when people sell stocks, they put their money into bonds, which would mean lower interest rates in some cases. So, if that were to happen, you might see lower interest rates, which means buyer demand. We're going to see low rates for the next couple of years regardless, but that could push rates even further down. But then when there was news that Trump could potentially stay in office, the market rebounded and the futures and everything corrected, and the market did well. So who really knows what's going to happen? But the idea is that interest rates are going to stay low for the next couple of years, just based on what the Fed said, which should, continue to help buyer demand and drive property, at least in my opinion. What's my opinion on people waiving contingencies when putting in an offer? I'm against it. I realize in this market, a lot of people are doing it. I recently had a client do it on an appraisal. and we went above and beyond considerably on the purchase price. I mean, I don't know, 7 or 8% higher. I mean, almost on the purchase price. It's crazy. And the property ended up appraising. I mean, we did some due diligence prior to them waiving that appraisal contingency and saying, looking at the comps and saying, hey, look, there's a really good chance it does appraise based on these comparables. So, it's not a good idea, especially for first-time home buyers. If you're a buyer and you're putting considerable amount of money down, you understand exactly what you're doing, understand that it could end up affecting you negatively, then, as a buyer, you get to make that decision. But as a real estate agent, someone with experience that's been doing this a long time, I recommend against it, just because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. If it's a new property that's recently been built and is nice and what have you, it's less of a concern. But in my market, a lot of the homes were built in the 60s and 70s, and so it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them because they were built back then, but there's just things that happen in those properties over time that need to be corrected in a lot of cases. I mean, I would tell you, out of however many deals I've done this year, the majority of them have had home inspections come back where the buyer asked for things to be fixed because they weren't comfortable with those things. They wanted them addressed. That, in addition to appraisals are becoming more of an issue just because values are going up so quickly. And so we're seeing, fortunately, I've only seen one, but we're seeing, when I say we, agents, because I'm in an office with a lot of agents, and I'm hearing of appraisal issues more often than not. So, in some cases, when a buyer's putting a little bit of money down, they don't have the funds to make up that difference. So, it's in technically by the contract, or binding by the contract, rather, if you waive appraisal contingency, you can't use the appraisal contingency to back out. Even if you have other contingencies, you're not supposed to use those to back out because of the appraisal. So it's one of those things. I would advise against it if you can. I know it's tough, but there will be somebody out there that doesn't ask you to do that. And so I know a lot of agents are pushing that. I'm not one of those agents pushing waive your appraisal contingency, waive all these contingencies, because I mean it's tough to get buyers to do that. So I hope that is helpful information for you there, Jennifer. All right, come on, talk to me. What do we got? I can just sit here and ramble or sing, and I don't think we want to hear either of those at the moment. Anything. So we've talked about conventional versus FHA recently, and this is another question that came in today. Is one better than the other? There are benefits to both, right? I mean, the benefit to conventional in most cases, if you're putting 20% down, conventional is always the way to go for most people, right? Unless you have a super low credit score, and then FHA may be the only option. But typically, if you've got the down payment, you are going to end up going conventional. But if you have the 5% down and you've got the option between a conventional loan or an FHA loan, a lot of times it makes sense to go with the FHA option because of lower PMI, and the payment ends up working out to be a better loan at the end of the day than the conventional loan. So keep that in mind when you're putting less than say 10% down. Look at your options, compare the two, one versus the other. John's asking about probate sales. So what about probate sales? What's your question on probate sales? Just went through one. Okay, so we got more coming in here. So a probate sale, what is a probate sale? A probate sale is a property that someone has owned. They didn't own it in a will or a trust, and they've passed away. So what happens is that property doesn't necessarily get passed along to a family member or somebody left in the will, a trustee or whoever. It goes to the court, and the court gets to decide what happens to that property, and it becomes a probate. And so Let's see here. And so John has a question about probate, which we'll come back to in a minute, just because we've got some other questions coming in here. So Antonio saying 6-year-old charge off. Should I wait for them to drop off in a year and go conventional or FHA now at 675 credit? It's up to you. I mean, it's hard to answer that question. I would tell you to look at the payment. Does it make sense now? Are you looking at finding property that meets what you're trying to accomplish now? If so, maybe now's the opportunity. In a year, you refinance into a conventional loan at that time. But it's all got to make sense, right? I mean, everybody has different goals of what they're trying to accomplish with real estate, and some people, that might not be the right thing. But in certain cases, we've had clients that have had credit things going on or what have you, and had to go FHA for one reason or another, and they're in that FHA loan for a short period of time, and at some point in the future they refinance. I mean, the idea here, at least in my opinion, is that you're not going to see interest rates really go up over the next year and a half. You might see interest rates trickle down in some cases. If not, they're staying somewhere around where they are now. So if you're able to refinance in a year, credit score goes up, you can go into a conventional loan that might end up benefiting you, at that time. And you always have the option of waiting. One of the little analogies is a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. If you can do it now, it makes sense now, it meets your goals now, maybe now's the time. You don't know what the market's going to look like in a year. You don't know what your credit's necessarily going to look like in a year. What happens if your credit goes down? What happens if you get hit with something else and then you're not able to qualify at that time? So you got to take all that stuff into account when making that decision, and not just look at the black and white, so to speak. Kind of read into it a little bit and figure out what you're trying to accomplish at that time. John's not getting back to me here. John, talk to me about that probate sale question. But probate sales in this market, just so we're talking here, I mean, really all property. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand about foreclosures. A lot of people think that because a property forecloses, it's going to come on the market and it's going to be a really cheap property because it foreclosed. Not the case. In most cases, assuming the property is not completely destroyed, and which most of them are not. I mean, at least in my experience selling a lot of them over the years, is that most of them are not destroyed properties. Sometimes you get disgruntled homeowners that destroy properties and that sort of thing, and that, yes, those properties do sell for under market value, but in most cases foreclosures sell for market value. So it's not like foreclosure comes to the market and you're going to get some steal on the property just because it's a foreclosure. In most cases, the banks buy it back at the courthouse steps, and end up doing some TLC to the property, paint, carpet, and what have you, maybe new appliances, and they sell it, and they end up selling it for market value. At least that was my experience. Now, you do get properties that have been destroyed and what have you, and a lot of times those get bought by investors or what have you, and those properties you can get value on, but they require cash. You can't go to the courthouse steps with a loan. You need cash to buy these properties. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about foreclosures. So Agar 223 actually. So Alex is saying that his property underappraised, buyer and I agreed in the middle, but having issues funding. Hearing lending is stricter at this time. So I'd love to know what you ended up selling your property for based on where it was, the list price and what it sold for. So throw that out there to me, because I mean, you're in my market, so I have an idea of what we're talking about here. But yeah, so we are seeing some appraisal issues. You have an example there. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean the deal falls apart, but it can, right? That's one of those issues that can come up. The getting a property into escrow, whether you're the buyer or the seller, is the first negotiation. It's not a time to celebrate. It's not a time to go crazy. There are other things that come up. The home inspection is one of those things. The appraisal is another. Right now, we're in a market where appraisals can become issues in some cases, depending on comps, because people want to get into the market and they're willing to pay whatever. Some people are willing to pay whatever because they think there might be an appraisal issue and they might be willing to negotiate. So as a seller, your agent should be talking to you about that possibility as well. But in the cases where it doesn't appraise, then it becomes a negotiation. The buyer is going to want the house for what it appraised for. The seller is going to want the number that they offered. So there comes some give and take that you need to decide, which direction you want to go. And in this case, so 600K was the purchase price or what it sold for. But to answer your question about lending being stricter at this time, I'm not aware of guidelines being any stricter than they were 6 months ago. With COVID, there became some additional overlays with regards to verifying employment at closing. But other than that, the guidelines haven't really changed. Some lenders may require higher credit scores than what the actual in some cases like FHA and VA, because they have credit score requirements that they've set. FHA is 500. I'm not even sure what VA is at the moment, but most lenders don't go down to a 500 credit score. They have this overlay on the program, and that overlay says, we will do credit scores at this or above. Well, I am aware of people that have commented on videos saying, hey, look, I can't find an FHA lender to do an FHA loan under a 620 credit score. That's a possibility. I do really understand there are companies out there that are doing it. You just need to find a broker that knows those companies and can do it. So in some cases, it may have gotten a little stricter, but for the most part, no. It's the same that it's always been. It's a pain in the butt to verify and have to re-verify and go through all the process of getting a loan to that, to the funding stage, because these lenders are busy, and your conditions that you sent in as a lender some of them might expire before the underwriter's ever able to review the file, and then they review the file, and then they need updated pay stubs, updated bank statements, and you have to re-get that information. So in some cases that's happening, but overall, to answer your question, I'm not seeing it a lot. So you accepted, so you had a 600 list price, your offer was 600,000, so they offered full price, and then the appraisal came in at 570, and you guys agreed on 585. So yeah, it's definitely happening. In some cases, as the listing agent, you can try to fight the appraisal. I've done it many times in my career. Gone out and gotten the comps, sent them to the lender, and try to fight it. Some cases we've won and gotten the case, them to overturn it. Some cases they don't change it. Your other option in that case would be to cancel, just say, no, I'm not willing to do anything. The property goes back to the market and you go through the process again, which is an option. And that maybe that loan goes to another lender and that lender can appraise it, because, unfortunately, appraisals are very subjective, especially in the case when you have markets like this where it's very busy in Southern California, and you might have an appraiser that's not even familiar with your area coming out to appraise the property, and they don't understand the ins and outs of the neighborhood and what have you. And that's why, as a real estate agent, the majority of the time, especially if I'm concerned with the value at all, I'm showing up to the appraisal to have a conversation with the appraiser to see what comps they're using. I'm coming with a packet of comps how I got to the value, in most cases, as well as if I receive multiple offers on that property, I'm showing the multiple offers. Clearly, we're taking names and stuff like that off of them, but we're showing that, hey, look, we had this much activity. There were this many people willing to pay this price, and trying to help with that value. So hopefully, in your case, it sounds like you guys have already agreed and going to be moving forward. So, congrats on getting an offer accepted in a crazy market. Now, the fun part becomes trying to find something that you can buy, because that is the tough part of being a buyer in this market, is that it's really good to be a seller. It's tough to be a buyer. There's just, you're getting put through the ringer. You're having to put in multiple offers. You're having to do, see a lot of property in some cases in order to find the right one to be able to put the offer in, and then find out there's 10 other offers on it. So appreciate it, Alex. What other questions do we have here, guys? So Sonny asked earlier, how do you need to disclose that? What is that? Let me see here. Someone died in the property. So when you in California, one of the disclosures you fill out upon as a seller when closing on a property is it the SPQ or the TDS? One of those documents has that particular question on it. I think it's the real estate, the seller property questionnaire. One of the questions on there is someone passed away or in the property in the last 3 years. So California, you have to disclose someone passing in the property in the last 3 years. Anything past 3 years, you don't have to disclose. Should you? Maybe in some cases, but legally you're not obligated to do that. So it's just written on that disclosure, and as agents, most of the time, if we're aware of it, which that's one of the questions that we kind of talk about initially in selling a property, is that if we find out it is, a lot of times we put it in the agent remarks, so that any agent looking at that property on the MLS is aware of it when they're having that conversation with their buyer, so that before their buyer sees the property or wastes their time or what have you, they know, that someone has passed away in the property, because there's a lot of people out there that aren't okay with that. And then on the other hand, there are a lot of people that are okay with it. So, just having that disclosure up front so you're not wasting your time or someone else's time is always the right thing to do. So Sonny is asking about buying in Huntington Beach. You live here, should you wait? You're a cash buyer. It's always the same question, or the same answer for me. It's, if you can find the right property now, in your case, you don't have a payment, because you're a cash buyer. If you can find the right property, yeah, I mean, and you plan to be in it the next 5 to 7 years, I think you're fine buying a property. I mean, Huntington Beach, we're not insulated from crazy things, but we're always going to be a desirable market. Where the weather is always going to be a driving factor. Huntington Beach is also the least expensive beach city in all of Orange County. Really south of say Redondo Beach. We're the least expensive beach city, and we've gone up a lot in the last couple of years because of that. And there's been people moving here because of how inexpensive, and I quote, it's expensive to a lot of other places, but for coastal real estate, it's been less expensive than others. And there's been a lot of redevelopment going on in the city that's helped values. And so I think it's a great time to be a buyer here. But if you think you're going to buy a property now and sell it for more in 2 years, rethink your plan. But if you're planning to hold it for any period of time, I think you're fine. I don't see anything that's going to happen that's going to change that. So, but would love to chat with you if you don't have somebody. So, TJ's asking, any tips or considerations when purchasing manufactured with land, no lease land? How impacted are the rates compared to single family homes if you have enough capital for traditional 20%, 30-year fixed? Not the right guy to answer that question. Most of the stuff here locally is on lease land. So it's tough to talk about that versus, when I'm from North Carolina, as I mentioned earlier. Originally, there's a lot of people that own land and then have a manufactured on it at that time. That's different. But here in Southern California, it's a different animal with regards to, because land leases go up annually in most cases, something you really can't control. And rates are always higher than they are on, say, traditional conventional loans in most cases. I'm only aware of 2 lenders that even do financing on manufactured. So, 21st Mortgage, I think, is one of them. And the other one, I can't think. If you email me, I can find it for you. But let's see here. Do we go out? Hello. All right, sorry about that, guys. Not sure what happened there. But as I was saying, if you are, what do we got going on here? Hello, hello. I know we lost video. It's the second time this has happened. Hang in there, guys. I'm trying to fix this. I don't know what's happening here. Whoa. So we're back on. Sorry, guys. I'm not sure. All right, here we go. So we're back on. All right. Again, not sure exactly what took place there, but we're good to go. So as I was saying on that, if you want to email me, I can definitely put you in touch with somebody that can help you with the mortgage financing on manufacturer, depending on your state. But I'm only aware of two companies that do it locally, so not a lot of help. Sorry. All right, so Dempsey Doodle. You're in the market, but retiring from the military in 10 years, and let's see here, plan on moving south somewhere warm. With the inflated price on housing, will I be okay selling in 10 years? VA loan, by the way. VA loans are great, just to say that to start, and thanks for your service. Appreciate that as well. The sacrifice and all that you do to protect us. To answer your question, yeah, I would think in 10 years you're going to be fine. I mean, again, real estate appreciates over time. Buy real estate and wait. Don't wait to buy real estate. That's kind of the saying, right? Or it goes the other way around. But either way, 10 years from now, it's a completely different market. It's hard to say exactly what's going to happen in 10 years, but I would think, if you buy now, you're planning to be there for some period of time, you're going to be fine. It depends on, again, the market that you're considering and where you're located. But typically, most markets are going to appreciate over time. Some markets, the Midwest in a lot of cases don't appreciate as fast as, say, Southern California. So that is going to play a factor in whether your market appreciates in 10 years. But either way, you're going to have paid down that loan in 10 years. You're going to be in a position where you can sell it and not have any issues in most cases. So, just consider that when going forward, if you're thinking about buying. Nice stash, Ken. My wife doesn't think so. In fact, my kids don't think so. I don't really think so. But it's here to stay for the month of November, as I do every year for the most part. So, Sonny, checking into a lot of homes in HB, but I do not see it selling on the prices owners are asking. Definitely market is slow. So, Sonny, not sure what market you're in at the moment, what price point you're in, but everything in Huntington for the most part is selling pretty quickly. Multiple offers in most cases. I looked, I think yesterday or the day before, in all of Huntington Beach, we had Huntington Beach is just over 205,000 people in Huntington Beach. I think there were just over 220 properties on the market between condos and single family homes. What's that? 1/100th of 1%. I mean, I don't know what the math is there, but not a lot of property. If it's priced right, it's going to sell quickly, especially if it's under 900,000 in our market right now. Things are going nuts. I mean, you can't find anything. I think the median home price right now in Huntington Beach is probably 800,000. I mean, for a single family detached. So, Sonny, reach me offline, man. We can chat a little bit about that. I can help you depending on your price point, right? I mean, I had someone call me yesterday looking to buy their son a property out of state and was wondering about what they could buy for $250,000. In a lot of areas of the country, you can buy a nice house for $250,000. Where I'm from, originally in North Carolina, you can buy an estate for $250,000. In California, in Huntington Beach, rather, you can't find it. There's nothing for $250,000 unless it's maybe manufactured on a lease land, and even that case, you're paying a couple grand a month for the land lease. So it's bonkers out there at the moment. So guys, we are pushing, what are we pushing? Close to an hour here. So we'll do about 10 more minutes of questions if you guys have them. So throw them out there to me. Let's address these. And then you guys can get back to popcorn and candy and election. Oh God, it's gonna be crazy tonight. Anyhow, uh, some message was retracted. I don't know what that means. This whole streaming thing's new to me. If you can't tell, having blackout issues, going through it. But I like it. I like to talk to you guys. I like to answer these questions. Also video topics. If there's something you guys want me to cover in a video, yeah, let me know. Always looking for good things to talk about. I mean, usually there's most of the stuff I address quite often, talking to buyers, talking to sellers. So I'm having these conversations on a regular basis. But a lot of first-time home buyers out there, or buyers that are just entering the market, maybe for a second or third time, have questions. And a lot of times, I don't find, I don't, they come up as comments in videos versus, now, and I can address them now, but I could also do videos on them. So Leon's asking, do you recommend refinancing after 6 months on conventional loan if you can get a lower rate? Current rate is 3.25. So it depends. Look at the cost involved in it. Look at how much um, your potential balance is going to go up. I mean, in most cases, if you can save money, it might be good. In most cases, if you could save 0.25%, there's some help. But I would tell you that in this case, if you could get something probably around 2.75, maybe even 2.5, definitely worth considering. But you could see rates trickle lower over the next couple of months. So it's kind of a case by case basis. But maybe talk to your mortgage professional and have them run some numbers for you and see if there's something out there that that makes sense. I mean, you just purchased in September, so in 6 months, look at the market and see where things are. I mean, 3.25 is a solid rate. I mean, nothing to be mad about there. I mean, long term, that's you should be a happy person. So, ANF New York, any special finance or assistance now for first time home buyers or first responders? So, you know, yes, I mean there are, but here's the thing: is that a lot of these programs or these assistance things are grants that are put through the cities, and at least here in California, these programs have no money. They've been, the budgets for them have been removed because a lot of these cities are over budgeted to begin with, and so there's not really a lot of assistance out there in regards to these programs to help first responders or teachers or what have you. But I mean, there are programs available. It's just a matter of whether or not you can get the funding for them to help you out. So, there are people out there, mortgage professionals that know a lot more about that than I do, being on the real estate side. But to answer your question, yes, for sure, there definitely are. I'm not sure if you're in New York, if that's just your tag. But if you're in New York, you might, there might be lenders out there or programs in your area that are, you know, a good fit. I mean, there might be grants and stuff available to help you with that. So the long way around, a long answer to get around them, yes, there are. Just whether or not you can actually get the lender to give you the money to do them. So. And a lot of times they're paired with, say, an FHA loan. So you have an FHA loan first, and then some sort of grant for the second, or that 3.5% down payment, if you will, that assists you with the down payment on buying a house. All right, guys, 5 more minutes, and we are going to wrap this up. So any questions, throw them out there at me, and let's address them before it's call it a night. Now you guys don't want to look at this mustache very much longer. Just going back through these comments here, make sure I didn't miss something that somebody had asked early on. Email address, Sonny, should be right there under my name on the screen, I think. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it should be right there if you want to take a look at that. If not, let me know. If it's not on there, then I'm not sure what I'm looking at. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up then. No new questions coming in. If you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Send me email if you have questions. Call me. I'm always up for conversations as well to help educate and guide you through the real estate process. I realize there's a lot going on, and most people don't know the ins and outs of everything, and I'm happy to assist where I can. So use me as a resource. But again, I encourage you to, um, you know, reach out if something is if you have questions about the process. So for now, I appreciate you guys watching. Hope you guys have a good night. Hopefully, you can relax with all the election stuff going on. All right, guys, have a good night. Talk soon.